Hello, this is Dave in the Wizard's Keep in Muncie, Indiana. And have you ever been out, shopping for a new game, but you're, a little tight on your budget, or maybe you're out looking for a gift and you don't want to spend, too much, trying to keep it limited or something? Well, today I'm going to do my top 10 favorite or best games under $25. And we're going to start at number 10 with Boss Monster. Now, Boss Monster is a kind of a retro 8-bit card-based game. You can kind of tell by the cover here. It kind of has that kind of classic 1980s Nintendo look. And this game basically harkens back to that kind of concept. In Boss Monster, you're the boss, or like a low dungeon boss, sort of like a Bowser in a Super Mario Brothers, or maybe like a Super Metroid or something like that. Well, in Boss Monster, you're going to be getting different cards and using those cards to build your dungeon or your lair that is going to kind of like lure in different heroes that you're trying to encourage to come into your dungeon, because you get points for often heroes that don't make it through your dungeon. But you got to be careful that if you lure too many heroes in or too powerful heroes, they're going to make it through your dungeon and get to your boss and wound them. Happens too many times, your boss is going to die and you're going to lose. But kind of a classic retro feel, like I said, and really only retails for only $24.99. So if you ever get a chance, you like those old kind of classic Nintendo games, this is one you may want to check out. Now with my next one, I kind of cheated a little bit. I went with two games, but they're both very, very similar. And one of them I talked about in my last video, and that is Sushi Go and Sunday Split. Now, both of these games, you're kind of essentially trying to do the same thing. It's a set collection game where you're trying to get different types of cards that kind of match up, and you get different points or increased victory points based on the cards that you match up. So in Sushi Go, you're trying to get different types of sushi or dumplings, and in Sunday Split, you're trying to kind of build different different types of ice cream that you like. If you get like a chocolate, vanilla, strawberry, kind of make your own Neapolitan ice cream, you get bonuses for that. You could also get bonuses for like if you get whipped cream and sprinkles together. That's so the only difference between these games is kind of like the mechanisms or the delivery method. In Sushi Go, it's a card drafting game. So what you're going to do in Sushi Go is you're going to sit around a table with other players and you're going to have a stack of cards. You're going to look through that cards and pick one and draft it. And so you take that card and set it aside and then pass the stack to the person sitting next to you. Then you're going to get a stack from the other person sitting next to you, and you're going to look through there and take a card and so on. And that's how you get your different cards that you're going to try to kind of pair up together to get to different points. In Sunday Split, it's slightly different. What you're going to do in Sunday Split is you've got one person who gets to kind of divide up things in different piles based on the number of players, who does the splitting, and then everyone else in turn order gets to kind of choose which pile. So whoever did the splitting, you split them up in different piles. Whoever did the splitting will get to choose last. So you got to be careful how you split things up. Also in Sunday Split, you're going to have some cards that are face down and some cards that are face up. So you got to kind of psych people out. There's a little bit of a bluffing mechanism there. And so you got to try to, if you're the person picking, you got to kind of be careful, kind of try to guess what your opponent did and lay some cards face down. Because some of them might be really good cards that kind of match up with other cards. Like I said, if maybe there's a face up, there's whipped cream, but sprinkles works well with whipped cream, or sprinkles aren't worth anything unless they're paired up with either sprinkles or whipped cream. And so you're thinking your opponent's trying to psych you out that way. Like, is that face down card? Is that going to be worth points, or is it going to be a dud? There's also in Sunday Split, there's different vegetables as well. Vegetables are worth negative points, so it's like broccoli and celery and things you don't want to put in your sundae. So maybe your opponent who played some face down cards, has got some negative points in there. So both of these, very, very similar, both of them excellent. Just kind of depends on the style of how you would want to, if you like the bluffing aspect or you like more of the card drafting. Both of them retail for $14.99. Both excellent choices. Now, next one I kind of did this again. I ended up grabbing two games. They were both very, very similar. So I couldn't really decide or choose which one over the other. And that is Unlock and the Exit game. These are kind of like the escape rooms in a box. So what you're going to do with each of these games is a cooperative game. So you're going to work together and trying to kind of solve the puzzle to figure out what it is, what it takes to, either in this case, this is there's several different scenarios, but this one here is the Pharaoh's Tomb. So you're going to be trying to figure out and working together like what to do to get through the Pharaoh's Tomb. Or this one is the formula. You got to kind of solve the secret formula to be able to get out of the lab. So these here both retail for $14.99, and they're kind of an excellent kind of a puzzle. The downside is you really can kind of only play them once, but especially with the unlock, I think with the exit games you actually sometimes fold or destroy some cards in the creation of the puzzle. But they're being only $14.99. It's very easy to get your money's worth out of it. Then unlock it. So the exit games, I guess, just has the cards and stuff in the box. Unlock also has an app that goes along with it to kind of adds a timer to kind of create some tension, and maybe you can kind of enter in puzzles into the timer or in the app. So it's sort of like you may punch in a key code and see if you've solved that puzzle or not. But if you're a fan of like kind of escape rooms or puzzles, and this is or you have a group of friends that might be interested in such things, these are both excellent ones to check out. Like I said, only $14.99. Next on the list, just one game this time, and that is Welcome to the Dungeon. Now, Welcome to the Dungeon is another kind of card or tile game where you've kind of got your class. There's 4 different characters in the base game, kind of like your fighter, your wizard, your cleric, your rogue, and each of those fighter or those characters are going to have different cards that are like special weapons or special armor, maybe a magic ring that does different things to defeat certain monsters, and those are all going to be laid out in the middle of the table. And that's just kind of in the neutral area. No one controls one of those characters yet. What you're going to do on your turn is you're going to either pass, which allows your opponents to kind of go into the dungeon, but you want to do that right away because there's no dungeon there, there's no cards. Or you're going to draw a card, which is usually a monster. When you draw that card, you have basically 2 choices. 1, you lay that card face down, and that kind of creates the dungeon pile. Or 2, you can discard that card, but if you do, you take one of the items away from the hero, either the rogue or the barbarian or the fighter. You may take his magic sword away, or you may take his magic ring away, and those get discarded as well. So the fighter, or as time goes on, the hero in the middle of the table is getting weaker and weaker. So that's what you're kind of balancing on is the dungeon getting tougher or too tough for the hero, or will the hero be able to go through the dungeon? And so you kind of got a little bit of a bluffing or a little bit of kind of trying to read your opponent, trying to see are they stacking the dungeon to make the dungeon too hard for the hero, or are they trying to make you think that the dungeon's too hard for the hero so they can take the hero into the dungeon. Because if you take the hero into the dungeon and you fail to get all the way through the dungeon, so your hero dies in there, you'll take a wound point. And if you get so many wound points, then you're out of the game. But if you take the hero through the dungeon and you succeed, you get a victory point. And depending on the number of players, if you get so many victory points first, then you win. This one also retails for $14.99. Very light, but kind of a fun, kind of trying to read or psyche your friends out type of game. Next game on the list, this one only retails at $24.99, and that is Biblios. Most of these games are card-driven games, but it's kind of expected to, when you're looking at games that kind of keep the price point down kind of low, so you have to kind of sacrifice some components and things like that. But it doesn't mean that any of these games don't have a lot of depth to them or a lot of complexity. And Biblios is another one of those. It's another card drafting game with kind of 2 phases. What you're going to do in the first phase is you're going to be drafting different cards. Whoever goes first is going to basically, you're going to deal out cards equal to the number of players plus 1. So whoever goes first is going to draw a card or look at the cards, take one of the cards for themselves, kind of like a drafting game like Sushi Go. But then you're going to take another card from the pile and put it face down, and that goes into a future market. Then you'll pass the remaining cards to the person next to you, and they'll take a card, and so on. So once you do that, everybody's going to take turns being who gets to draft first. And then once all the deck is gone, you enter the second phase, which is the market phase. So every round, one of the cards was going into the market. So then you're going to flip over cards, and then you're going to bid with money that you have drafted. Because some of the cards you draft are money, some of them are different sets that you're trying to collect to get different points. There's like 4 different suits, and the winner of each suit, whoever has the highest value of each suit, is going to win that suit and get points. So it's kind of an interesting, when you're drafting, are you taking the cards now to get your suits, or are you taking money to maybe win the auctions to get cards that way? Another kind of interesting twist to the draft. Like I said, only $24.99. Next game on the list is The Resistance. Now, The Resistance, not a card drafting game, but The Resistance is kind of a social deduction game. This one you're going to pair up into different teams of either somebody who is in the resistance, or you may be spies trying to kind of thwart the resistance. And how that works is at the beginning of the game, everyone's going to be secretly dealt a role. And that's going to determine if they're a spy or the member of resistance. But no one knows who is who, so there's a lot of paranoia going on. And if it's your turn, what you're going to do is you're going to decide to go into or when it's your turn to go on a mission, you're a mission leader, you're going to pick 2 other players in the group to go on the mission with you. And then each of you are going to anonymously vote if the mission succeeds or not. For the mission to succeed, it must be unanimous. Everybody must vote yes, the mission succeeds. So if you end up taking a spy with you, they can vote no, and the mission's going to fail. But you don't know who the spy is. Or maybe you're the spy, and you kind of brought 2 other players in, and you're trying to thwart the mission. But then at the same time, after the fact, you're going to try to pass the blame or pass the buck on somebody else. And I ain't the spy; they're the spy. So that's kind of the greatness of this game. The resistance only has so many turns to succeed in so many missions. If they fail too many missions, then the spies win. If they are able to get to their number of missions successfully, you figure out who the spy is and go, oh, so and so's the spy. Let's not take him on the next mission. Then you're going to be able to, the resistance is going to be able to succeed in their missions. Another great game, retails only at $19.99. By the same company, another kind of a social deduction game, and that is Cuckoo. Now, Cuckoo retails for $14.99, and what Cuckoo is another where you're kind of psyching your opponents out or kind of bluffing type of game. And Cuckoo, everyone's going to be dealt 2 cards, and you're going to keep those face down. You can look at your cards, but no one else knows what kind of cards you have. And each card is going to have different special abilities. Like normally on your turn, you can take money from the communal pool. You can take like 2 coins. Well, if you have, I believe is the Duke, then you can take 3 money. But the cool thing about this game is you don't actually have to have the Duke. You just say you have the Duke. So on your turn, you say, I have the Duke, and you take 3 money. Well, someone else can kind of say, no, I don't think you have the Duke. And in that case, you have to either A, reveal that you have the Duke, and if you do so, then the person that accused you has to take one of their cards and discard it. If you don't have the Duke, though, you're going to have to force to discard one of your cards. If someone ever loses both of their cards, then they're out of the game. And the last person standing is the winner. So you got to be careful whenever you're in a bluff, because if someone calls you on it, you're going to lose half your life points. But if you think that there's a risk if they call you out and they're wrong, and maybe you think, someone's being a little conservative. Maybe they don't want to risk it. Maybe they're down to the last card. Then you can kind of take advantage of that by bluffing that you may have a particular role that you don't have. Another great game, social deduction, and that's Cuckoo. Next one on my list, this was on my last video of gateway games, and that's Forbidden Island. This one retails only for $24.99, and now we're starting to get to an example of showing that some of these games can have quite a bit of depth to them, not all just card drafting games or simple card games. This one here has a lot of crunchy tiles. I'm going to open it up here. You can kind of see some of these components. So, even though this one's only $24.99, you can kind of see, you have nice little resin, this kind of holy grail here, or this kind of crystal flame. And with Forbidden Island, what you're going to be doing, you're going to be laying out these different tiles. As you can kind of see here, these are nice crunchy tiles. What you're going to do is you're going to lay these different tiles out, and these tiles are going to be sinking, because basically a concept is the island is sinking. So what you're trying to do as a group, it's a cooperative game, you're going to be working together trying to scatter throughout the island and try to recover the 4 different treasures before the island sinks. And once you get get the 4 treasures and get off the island before the island sinks. So on your turn, you may be doing, playing card or gathering cards so you can get the treasures, or you might be letting somebody else in your group go get the treasures, and what you're doing is shoring up different tiles with sandbags to try to keep that section of island sinking so you can make sure you can all get back to the helipad and get free. So another excellent game, retails for only $24.99, and that's Forbidden Island. Number 2 on the list, and this one's from one of my favorite designers and favorite companies, and that's from Red Raven Games, and that's Artefacts Inc. Now, Artefacts Inc. is another similar one to Forbidden Island. If you play for Artefacts Inc., this game is just as heavy and just as complex as a $50 or $60 game. Very, very similar to, it's kind of a kind of dice placement game, sort of similar to Kingsburg, or maybe a little bit of Machikoro if you ever played those, because you're kind of building an engine with cards that's going to give you certain dice or give you more dice to roll, and then when you roll those dice, you're going to place those dice in different locations to generate different resources, which allows you to gain different victory points. But a lot of depth in this game, and it only retails for $24.99. It's an excellent one, Artefacts Inc. And then the last one on this list is another, kind of keeping my trend of kind of cheating a little bit with going with 2 games, but this is also very similar to where the other last entries where we had 2 games. They were very, 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 very similar. And that is Hero Realms and Star Realms, which effectively is the kind of the same game, except Star Realms is kind of the sci-fi version and Hero Realms is the fantasy version. Once you start adding some expansions, these will drastically deviate from each other. But with just keeping it under the $25 price range, I decided to just go with the base games without any expansions, and that way they're basically the same game with a different skin. Star Realms is only for 2 players, and its retails for $14.99. Hero Realms can go up to 4 players, and it retails for $19.99. What these are is they're deck building games, so similar to like Dominion, Thunderstone, or Ascension, or Marvel Legendary. And in a deck building game, if you're not familiar, what you do in a deck building game is everyone starts with a deck of the same cards. And in Star Realms and Hero Realms, that's going to be money and attack. So your cards are either going to have money on them or they're going to have attack damage on them. And what that means is when you're going to draw your hand, you're going to look at what you draw, and you're going to play all your cards at once. If for all the money cards you get, you can take those cards and buy new cards. And these are going to be cards that let you draw cards or let you do more damage or give you or something. In Star Realms, it's like different space bases that you can place, which will kind of defend you because you have to attack the space bases before they can attack you, or the spaces will give you different benefits in future turns because they stay in play. Hero Realms, instead of bases, is kind of like heroes that you can hire that you can place out in front of you, and those heroes are going to like help defend you or give you different advantages. There's also different factions within both, and a lot of those factions have their similar themes, so you can kind of, if you start drafting cards or buying cards from the same factions, you're going to have a kind of similar theme or strategy to their deck. But also they get ally bonuses, so some of the cards will have one effect, but if you've played another card of the same faction, then you're going to get an additional effect, so it kind of benefit or rewards you for kind of drafting those cards same factions. But then what you're going to do with those either you're buying cards, or if you get damage cards, then you take that damage and either damage your opponent's bases or heroes, depending on which game you're playing, or damage your opponent directly. And when someone gets to 0 life points, then that person's defeated. So that is my top 10 kind of great games under $25. Thank you for watching. If you have any questions about any of these games, feel free to stop in the Wizard's Keep and ask me questions about them anytime, or you can post comments on Facebook, and I'll be happy to try to reply to those. Thank you again for watching, and hope you enjoyed this video.